We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. We have the good fortune to have Ed with us on the show today. You can see him there being his goofy old self. Um, some, people,
Old being the operative word.
some people might say, well, he's old. And the way he's acting, is he mentally diminished? No, he's been like this for 30 years. So this is nothing new.
Yes.
The fact that he is weird makes
No,
me know he's
just the
fine.
same. Yeah. That's
Anyway,
right. Yeah.
well, as we were talking, before we went on here, you said not much going on. What are we going to talk about? We could talk about summertime or some shit. Yeah. What have you been thinking down there in Tennessee with all? I mean, it's hard to know where to start. As we're recording this, Jim Jordan just lost the third vote for Speaker of the House, this time by 25 votes. And in a TikTok, I said, it reminds me of a famous line in a famous movie. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Because this guy is like these freaks that love to get kicked in the balls. I don't know what it is about embarrassment with him, but that's obviously a kink of his.
I think everyone, and this includes people who voted for Donald Trump even, and they should be able to see the clown show that's going on and go, these people are not bright.
No.
I mean, how stupid do you have to be to lose twice, bet worse each time, and try for a third? I mean, there's an old saying that doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the very definition of mental illness. There you go.
Well, you know what's where the stupidity starts, though. And I think the Republicans are just finally now getting it. The reasonable Republicans, if there is such a thing, is that eight Trump-la-fucks kick out Kevin McCarthy, and apparently they don't have a fucking plan. They don't know what they're doing with it. They just did it for the sake of doing it. And now Matt Gaetz is getting some heat. He's getting people yelling at him, Kevin McCarthy. Somebody lunged at him. Somebody's going to kick Matt Gaetz's ass, and that would be fun to watch. I'd pay money to a pay-per-view for that.
Yeah, so would I. And if the Republicans were smart, they'd sell tickets,
Yeah, no shit. Watch
Matt Gaetz get his ass kicked, because people would definitely shell. I would shell out for that, $100. I'd give him $100 to watch somebody kick Matt Gaetz's ass.
I would too. Now, where do you think this is all going to end? I presume, we're recording this on Friday. I presume there's not going to be a resolution by the time this airs on, say, Monday. So what the hell do you think the plan is here? How does this all end up? I've got some ideas, but there's no sure way to get this thing fixed.
Well, did you ever watch Modern Family?
Yeah.
Well, we watch it in reruns every now and then because I do think it was very well done, and it always makes me laugh. But the wife always had that phrase, "What's the plan, Phil?" When there obviously wasn't one. There is no plan. The Republican Party cannot legislate. They have no idea of how to run a government. All they know how to do is obstruct a government. So nothing will happen. I imagine that maybe they might find a way to, pull Gaetz and some others into a room with clubs and get them, explain to them that if you want to get out of this room in one piece, you're going to have to vote for McCarthy and put him back in. I mean, I think that's where it's headed myself. I don't know what other option they have.
Well, I thought that originally that they would just get desperate and put McCarthy back in, and I guess that's possible. But the short-term answer seemed to be kind of a no-brainer, and that was just give the sitting temporary Speaker of the House some power to just start getting some things done. That would be the quickest way to get the House back up and running. But of course, MAGA is fighting against that. And they said, if we do that, it'll just be like ceding power to the Democrats. Well, dumb fucks, you already did that, because Democrats are unified. They have
Pretty
212
much.
votes. You're two fucking entities
Yeah.
that can't come together. So Democrats are the ones making the decisions here.
You made the you used the phrase earlier, reasonable Republicans. I used to think there were some
I did, yeah.
and I still think there may be a couple in the Senate who've been there a while. But the group that got into the House most recently, and even the ones who've been there for a while, like Chuck Grassley, they've lost their minds. They're either there for to make money, which we've seen they're able to do. I mean, just look at the net worth of people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like this who came in without a pot to piss in, as they used to say, and now they're worth millions. How'd that happen, right?
That's a good question.
This is who becomes a Republican representative. People that are looking to feather their own nest because they're damn sure not coming up with any legislation to help anybody except rich people.
Right.
I can't remember when any Republican offered any bill that did anything to help anybody who wasn't a friggin' billionaire or millionaire or something like that. And I challenge anybody to come up with one. I really do, because I don't think it exists. Anything that has been done to help you and me, Main Street America, poor people, anything but the rich people has come from a Democrat. And that's been the case for a long, long time.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting. I've heard some people talk about this showing now where 20, then 22, now 25 Republicans vote against Jim Jordan. I've heard some moderators say, well, it looks like that the Republicans are stepping away from MAGA and they finally are trying to separate themselves. And I said there might be some reasonable Republicans, but all those reasonable Republicans are just catching on now. They could have realized this 6 years and done something about it and not be in this position. But instead, they decided to bend and bow to MAGA, even though they are a minority in their caucus. And this is where it brought them, because they were gutless, or they just went along with what they thought was going to get them vote, not what's right, not what's best for this country. And that's what's appalling about the entire Republican caucus.
Absolutely. And let's put the House aside for a while. We're focused on the House now because that's where the bullshit's going on with that we can see, right? But remember, the Senate Republicans twice had the chance to do away with Donald Trump. He was impeached twice. They could have voted against him and he would have been a footnote in history. He would have been confined to the trash heap. But no, they were too friggin' scared. And this is exactly what Mitt Romney tells us, that he had all these guys saying to him, I'd love to vote against him, but I can't afford to pay $9-10 million a year in security like you can, Mitt. Right. You know, I'm just, you know, I have a few $1 million that I've managed to sock away by being a senator, but I don't want to spend it all on security. And I'm afraid they'll come after me if I vote against Trump. So it was cowardice in the Senate that keeps Trump where he is. And then the House, I mean, you've got all these guys coming from gerrymandered districts where they're always going to be Republican. I mean, no Democrats are going to be elected in the district I live in because they're all Republicans, you know? And
people are asking, why does Jim Jordan keep doing it, even though he knows he's going to lose? And here's my theory on it. As much as you said senators and representatives in the House were cowards because they were afraid that MAGA would come after them, Jim Jordan loses the first two. So what does he do? He uses the same strategy as his Lord and Savior does. And he goes after fucking people, calling wives and threatening them with their careers. And one guy says, we're not like the left. We're not violent, but we're going to fucking molest you. I'd like to know how you're going to molest somebody without it being violent. The guy who I heard on this voicemail, he wasn't a politician because he was too fucking stupid. His vocabulary was limited and he was just talking out of his ass, but he was trying to be intimidating. Well, we know how intimidating he was because more Republicans voted against Jim Jordan. But I think Jim wanted to employ this tactic because he thinks it's a real tactic. And after the second one, he said, well, let's just see if that intimidation worked. Well, Jim learned a lesson. Didn't fucking work. They're not afraid of you. They don't respect you. They're not into you anymore.
Yeah, I thought there was a very telling moment when McCarthy was speaking in favor of Jim Jordan to be speaker,
Jesus.
which totally boggles my mind. I mean, talk about taking the last shred of self-respect that you might have and flushing it down the toilet. That's what the McCarthy speech amounted to. But the raucous laughter that erupted from the Democrats when he described Jim Jordan as an effective legislator, a guy who's never had a bill enacted.
Right.
Never had a bill, never, I don't even think he's ever even offered one, much less got one passed.
Well, the funny thing about this is it's really, I think, pretty pathetic, pitiful when you sit and watch somebody like Kevin McCarthy or Marjorie Taylor Greene or anybody try to blame the Democrats for the problems the Republicans are having. Well, they voted against Jim Jordan. Well, of course they did. He's a fucking criminal. You want the Democrats to vote for Jim Jordan or even Kevin McCarthy, who just got done lying to the motherfucker? No, we're not responsible for voting these people in. You have the majority, but they insist. Well, if more Democrats voted against Kevin McCarthy and Jim Jordan than Republicans, so what's your point?
Well, they keep trying to do that, and they even be called on it by Fox News reporters. I mean, my God, who would have ever expected that when they talk about, well, we couldn't pass the debt limit because the Democrats, blah, blah, blah. But it was the Republicans who voted against it, remember?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, but the Democrats.
The Democrats passed the infrastructure bill without one Republican vote. They passed the COVID relief bill without one Republican vote, and then after the fact, the Republicans try to take credit for it. The whole idea of this party line voting, the Republicans started it, and now it's slapping them in the face. Now they don't like it. That's why I'm saying it's so pathetic. It's so pitiful. These guys are so transparent, and you can see how stupid and desperate they are, and they aren't even trying to cover it up.
No, I just saw Tim Scott the other day trying to take credit for reducing the cost of insulin. Every Republican voted against it, and they're even trying to roll it back. But he's trying to take credit for it. So he's scum. Tim Scott, you're scum. You heard it from me.
Tim Scott is just a fucking loser. I mean, he's kind of like Ron DeSantis in a more passive way. He's socially awkward, but not in a fascist way as much he is in just a stupid way. And, that seems to be running rampant in the Republican Party. Pick out one Republican that you say, here's a smart guy or gal. Here's an articulate guy or gal. There isn't one in the Republican Party. Not fucking one.
No. And lest you think I am singling out Tim Scott, Republicans running for president, you're all scum. Every one of you.
They are. I mean, and that's, the thing about Jim Jordan is that Jim Jordan had one curse put on him going into these votes over and above his track record, his personality, and his integrity. Those things would keep him from getting voted in. But there was one that was the death knell, and that was Donald Trump's endorsement. And guess what?
Yes.
All through these votes, where has Donald Trump been? Donald Trump doesn't like to be associated with losers. So now he's abandoned Jim Jordan.
He checked out.
Jim Jordan.
Yeah. No, sorry. Can't endorse you because you're going to lose, Yeah. He's for them until they lose. Then he's against them.
And that's what Republicans never understood is Donald Trump's in it for himself. As long as you're of value to him or you can get him something, he's your buddy. But the moment you speak against him, the moment you become not as powerful, like you get voted out of office or out of a chair position, you're of no value to him, and you might as well be dead to him.
You're like a wife. You're like one of his wives.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not wishing anything. I'm not wishing anything here, but say Jim Jordan keels over of a heart attack on the House floor. I do know that this good man, Donald Trump, has offered to bury him at his at his golf course in Mar-a-Lago, which will probably be taken away from him by the courts.
Keep our fingers crossed on that. I'm looking at. I want this guy poverty stricken. I want him with not a penny to his name. I want him wandering around drinking Sterno through a loaf of bread. That's what I want for Donald Trump.
You sound like you've done that before. Did you have a period of time in the 60s where you go, get me some Sterno and get me some Wonder Bread? I'm gonna get fucked up.
Never got quite there. No.
It reminds my grandfather used to tell me stories about the Depression. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it when he told me. He says it was so bad during the Depression, the alcoholics would literally crawl under cars and open up the radiator and drink it, because there wasn't antifreeze back then. It was all alcohol. Yeah. And it was some nasty ass alcohol, but they were so desperate they'd unscrew that radiator and drink it right out of the fucking car. That's, and then they of course stepped up to Sterno and Wonder Bread. Yeah. but Donald Trump is going to be broke when this is said and done. When we see all that is going on with this court case, there's no other way around it. People will say, well, he's going to get out of it. No, he's not. There is so much evidence in this lawsuit that he is fucking done. They are going to take all his shit, take all his money, take the essence of who Donald Trump is, and he'll be left a fucking penniless shell.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. And we got some good news. Sidney Powell flipped. And she is now legally obligated to speak the truth about Giuliani and Trump and all of the machinations that went on. Machinations, beg your pardon, although it was a mess. But or she goes to prison.
Right. Well, and that's the ironic thing. She was the queen of the crazies, the conspiracy theorist. I don't know if she really believed that or she was purposely lying just to benefit her and her favorite son, Donald Trump. I don't know which it is, but she seems so certain of it. And then she comes out and pleads guilty. And it was a good move because, with the charges against her, there were felony charges. She could have been in jail for 20 plus years. So instead, she pleads out, and now she's got several misdemeanors. She's going to be on probation for 6 years. She's got to pay back a little bit of money. And of course, she's got to testify against every fucking defendant of those 19, of which she's one. So 18, one already rolled. So 17. But I think what happened with Sidney Powell, by the time you hear this podcast, I guarantee you there will be more people, maybe a lot more people that flip in that Georgia court case.
Yeah, I mean, what's her name? The blonde, Ennis. She's going to flip. She got to, because she was attached to Powell's. You never saw one without the other.
No,
so they're tied in. Ennis.
Jenna Ellison, I think.
Ellison, yeah. And the other thing, don't forget though, this was for the Georgia's charges, right? The state charges. Right. Jack Smith's still out there, and he's still got Sidney Powell. She pleaded guilty. She pleaded guilty to the state charges. Well, they're federal charges too.
Well, so exactly.
If she's guilty of the state charges, she's guilty of the federal charges.
Well, and she's a co-conspirator, right, in Jack Smith's case. And we know he specifically only indicted Donald Trump to keep him separate and keep it less complicated so we can get him done. But I think there's no question that Sidney Powell's going to get indicted in the federal thing. Now, the thing about it is, if you're going to plead out, typically what you'd want to do is get yourself cleared and pleaded out in the state and in the federal, if you have both going on. But that didn't happen here. That could mean that Jack Smith doesn't need her, and he isn't going to give her the option to plead out. So she's not out of the realm of going to jail.
No, No. I think this shows you just how stupid, really, literally stupid Donald Trump is. Because he has no ethics, because he has no conscience or anything. It never occurs to him that, hey, if I pick up her legal fees, if I pick up all these people's legal fees, they might stay loyal to me. But if I don't, then why wouldn't they go after me for revenge? And he chose not to do anything for him, including Rudy, because as well as I do, he held this fundraiser for him at Mar-a-Lago. Guess who gets the money?
Right.
Right.
Well, the thing about it is, I was thinking about that, about Jenna Ellison said, well, he's not paying my legal fees. So she'll probably testify against him. But the way Donald Trump did business, there is so many people and so many situations and so much evidence. Even if she did pay Jenna Ellis's legal fees, he can't handle it all. I mean, not even if he could afford it, he can't manage it. It's too big. Everything, as far as people speaking against him, from Sidney Powell to whoever else, it's just unmanageable. It's overwhelming. That's why I say there's no question about it. One way or another, the fucker's done.
Yeah, and it's all coming at him at the same time. So yeah. I don't care if he had 50 of the best lawyers who ever lived, that would be pushing it. If he had the OJ defense team, it would be pushing it, and he's not going to get them because they know he doesn't pay, and they're in business, so it's not going to happen. But I'm wondering, he keeps daring the judge to do something with the gag order. He keeps pushing that envelope. She could move up the trial date. She could throw his ass in jail. She could fine the shit out of him. There's all kinds of things that she can do. And I don't know. He seems to think by pushing the envelope, he gets more. Hang on. My wife's giving me something here.
A bulletin. The wife's giving Ed a bulletin. Get bread, take out the garbage, and get off your ass. Is that what it says?
No. Chesbro plea deal in Georgia.
Yeah, I knew that was coming because the court case is starting on Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks to the newsroom for that.
Yes.
And I knew that was coming. I think he was surprised by Sidney Powell pleading out, and he was left to go on trial himself. Jury selection happens today, and which is Friday. And then next week, by the time you hear this podcast, that court case was supposed to go. Now here's Cheesebro sitting there all alone. What's that? What
cheese stands alone.
That's what I was thinking. That cheese stands alone. And so now he's thinking to himself, I'm all by myself. This is going to be on TV. Now, I understand he was offered this deal before and he turned it down, which is dumb as fuck.
Yeah.
And then when Sidney took it, he's gone, oh, fuck, I could be in jail for 20 years or I get 6 months on probation. Yeah, I'm not surprised he did that. And thank your wife for bringing that to us. It's always
tough.
Deb.
Yeah.
But that's not surprising. So there will be no court case this week that we'll be able to see on TV. But don't you think, Sidney Powell, now Cheesebro, this is going to start some momentum, kind of an avalanche of people that are pleading out in that group of 19 defendants. We've got 3 now that have pled out, so there's only 16 left.
Yeah, could we agree too? Because I fully believe that ridicule is the thing that best affects people like Trump and all these guys.
I agree.
Could we refer to him as Cheeseburger from now on? I know he wants to be Chesbro, but I think Cheeseburger will do when we talk about him.
Well, he was a fairly well thought of lawyer.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be henceforth. I think he's going to be serving cheeseburgers as opposed to doing lawyering, because clearly he fucked up on this one. Now, what do you think now, though, as we get to the point people are going to flip on Donald Trump, but I think there's going to be a point where the flipping stops. Well, like when they get to Meadows, Giuliani, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, who the fuck is Donald Trump going to flip on? He's got no option to flip. And Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows were so in tight in this whole situation. I don't think they're going to get the opportunity to flip unless they think they need it to nail Trump.
They might. I'm still not convinced Meadows hasn't made some kind of deal way back
with Jack. I don't know about Georgia.
Right. Georgia, probably not. But Rudy, we were talking about Trump earlier, doing Sterno through the bread and so forth. I think Rudy is at that point. This guy's broke.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't have two pennies to rub together. And he's going to do one of two things. He's either going to flip or he's going to check out.
Yeah. Like take an overdose of Ozempic or something.
Something like
what the fuck he's going to do.
Yeah,
well, you wonder about that, with the pressure that's on these people and the sheer number of people and the different emotional states. Is there somebody out there in this group just saying, fuck it, I can't take it anymore, and off themselves? Now, people will say, I hope Donald Trump does that. Donald Trump will never, ever commit suicide or take himself out because he's a narcissist. He thinks he's the greatest person in the world. He would kill other people before he killed himself.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure he's considered that. If he could arrange it, Rudy would be dead long ago, and so would Sidney and anybody else who could give evidence against him. I mean, the guy's basically a mobster. I mean, he's been involved with the mob this whole time. You don't do business in Atlantic City and in New York and so forth the way he did unless you've got some mob connections. You may not be a made guy, but you're a friend of ours kind of thing,
I've heard people say that before about the mob mentality and how he's got these strategies with Vladimir Putin and all this stuff. I will just say this: if Donald Trump is the head of a mob family, it is the fucking Apple Dumpling Gang, because he's not smart enough. I don't think Donald Trump is an equal partner when it comes to all this stuff. I think he's a useful idiot. People recognize he has a little power, he has a little money, and we can make him do whatever the fuck we want. And that's what the Republicans did to him. When they finally had to accept him, they said, well, let's just control this motherfucker. Donald Trump could have come off as a great president if the Republicans would have allowed him to do it. But he's so malleable, he's so weak, that the Republicans go in, the truly evil people in the Republican Party just had him doing whatever he thought was going to benefit him. Same with Putin. I don't think he's a equal partner in any of this shit. I think he's just a fucking dupe.
Yeah, and he always has been. He was, quote, lucky enough to hook up with a mob lawyer who got him through. His father got him through the early parts by just keep giving him money right, as he failed and failed and failed and failed again. And Daddy kept handing him the money until he died. Then he got it all, cheated his other relatives out of it and everything. But he had his mob lawyer who taught him everything like that. But Trump is not a smart man.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't know anything. He literally does not know anything. I don't think I've ever met a person that didn't know anything. And he doesn't. He doesn't know. And he's always claiming, I know more about windmills than anybody. I know more about this than anybody. I know more. I saw a litany of them. Somebody had made a video of him saying, I know more about than everything. But he knows nothing, literally. He's never been an equal partner.
If you want to be truly evil and truly a villain, you have to be really smart, really self-aware, and very observant of other people. You got to be able to do that, and he's not. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, he's like a fucking top. Remember when we were young, there was a game called Battle Tops. Spin those fuckers around and just keep bouncing off shit. That's who he is. He's just he's like one of those frag bombs where everything goes everywhere and it's everything, and he causes destruction. And Russians and Putin and the Republicans, benefit from that because he's stupid enough to go out there and put himself out there and say stupid stuff that the rest won't say. So they just fucking light his fire and send him out and let him fucking do whatever destruction he can do. That's the problem. I mean, he's going to end up in jail just because he's stupid.
I hope so. I saw, I don't remember which case it was in, but one of the prosecutors in one of the cases that had identified Donald Trump as a flight risk. I guess they were pushing for some sort of, maybe ground his plane or something. I don't know, pull his passport, something like that. I do think that's what's going to wind up with Trump. I don't know where he's going to go. I assume Saudi Arabia, if they'll take him. See, the thing is, he may, unless he's still got some secrets hidden somewhere. They've already done the payoff. They gave the payoff to Jared Kushner.
Yeah. Well,
and to Trump too, but that payoff, that's been done. So why would they want him? He's got nothing else to offer.
No, he's of no value to anybody anymore. So nobody wants him. At the same time, I don't know that he could get away with fleeing the country because he's being heavily guarded by Secret Service, which in effect is a law enforcement team.
True.
If he leaves, that Secret Service group better fucking go with him because they're going to jail for allowing it to happen. So I don't know if he's a flight risk. I don't know if he has the balls to do that. And I don't know that the Secret Service would allow it. If they're doing their job, they wouldn't allow it. If they're not, they better leave too, because they're going to get arrested here.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I hadn't considered that angle, but one assumes that perhaps he may have weeded out any Secret Service agent who has any integrity or anything, and he's just got a few loyalists now or something. I don't know.
You'd have to be pretty stupid to be still going along with Donald Trump after all the failures. Yeah, but they're out there.
Have to be. Oh yes,
they're out there. I tell you what, Ed, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay, no.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed joining us on the show. A lot of things happening this past week, from Jim Jordan to the Georgia case. We were talking about it earlier. We're recording this on Friday, in spite of the fact you might be hearing it Monday. Kenneth Cheesebro also decided to flip, as did Sidney Powell earlier. This isn't surprising. What's surprising is what I brought up last time, is he originally turned it down. He was offered it first. He turned it down. Sidney Powell was offered it, and he goes, fuck yeah, I'll take that. I'll stay out of jail. Yeah. And then Kenneth Cheesebro had second thoughts about it. I really think this is going to start a waterfall of all these lower level defendants. I mean, I think these lower level defendants were charged specifically as kind of a way to get convictions and a way to get people to testify against Donald Trump, Meadows, Giuliani, and some of the others.
Well, this, once again, I remember when the AG brought the charges, and a lot of the pundits were going, well, it's too unwieldy, blah, 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 blah. She knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
She brought these 19 knowing that at least one of them would flip, and as soon as one flips, they would fall like a house of cards. And I think that's what you're going to see, because they know that the cheeseburger and Sidney can out them now. Right. And say, well, so-and-so was in the room with me, so yeah, he knew all this. And one of them is going to say that about everybody, because they have to. Right. They have to admit, because they know, they've interviewed all these people and they've cross-referenced all this stuff, and they have other informants and so forth. So they know what the truth is. It's just now they can get them on record saying it, and then it's just a matter of flip, flop, and eventually they get their conviction. It's classic RICO. That's the way it's done. You get people to flip. You nail one. Will you nail one? That's all you need. And then flip, 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 flip.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about Sidney Powell, you talked about her exposure on the federal level with Jack Smith, because that certainly is there. One of the most interesting things about Sidney Powell and her testimony is going to be valuable. I don't know if they'll get to it in Georgia, maybe, because that's basically about the fake electors and all that stuff. But Sidney Powell was part of a meeting in Washington, D.C. on December 18th. And this is a notable shit show. We had a bunch of people in there, a bunch of QAnon fucking crazy people trying to bounce ideas, spitballing or brainstorming ideas of ways to mount a coup against this country. And apparently got real ugly when the lawyers stepped in and said, "What the fuck are you nutcases doing?" But the fact is, Sidney Powell was in that meeting. She knows exactly what happened there. And Sidney Powell also had multiple conversations with Donald Trump regarding all this shit. So she's going to have a lot of dirt on Donald Trump. And it's going to be first. The only concern I have about this, clearly the bitch is crazy, is her testimony going to be credible?
Well, you know, I do think she's a true believer. I think she was, I think she bought into QAnon like so many did. I mean, the whole Hugo Chavez, Cuba tie-in, the funding coming in from all of these communist countries to overthrow the election, all of that stuff. I think she really believed it. I think she went down the rabbit hole like so many did with QAnon. I mean, there were people here in my hometown who were so invested in this crap, people that you would never expect would be, but they believed every word of it. And I think she was right there. I think Jen Ellis was right there too. That this was all and I do think the wife of a certain Supreme Court justice was part of it too. And I think that's going to come out even more because she and Sidney were pretty tight, I understand.
Oh yeah, they were very tight. They're both crazy ass bitches. And the superseding indictments coming out of Jack Smith would likely include Sidney Powell, Ginny Thomas, sitting members of Congress. It's funny, on TikTok on Thursday, I talked about this on the podcast on Friday. There was a story going out, and this is one of the things you have to be very careful about when you're watching TikTok or any social media. I had 3 or 4 people come out and says, "Oh, you're not going to believe this. Jack Smith met secretly with the grand jury, and there's some unsealed indictments, and it's the members of Congress." Now, that scenario, I think, will play out. That will play out. But once I heard that, I go, well, that's cool. Let's see where it's coming from. Couldn't find one fucking thing that said that. Not one credible source, not even one incredible source could tell me that. So that's what happens. And this is what happens with like the Sidney Powells and all the people that get caught up in QAnon. They hear something and they want to believe it. So they do, whether it's credible or not. It feeds into their narrative or their beliefs. They want to believe it. So without thinking, they just spew it forth. And that comes from Republicans and Democrats, clearly, because that whole story didn't exist. Now, frankly, now, I'm not sure how this is going to play on the video version of this podcast, but Ed and I just talking, minding our own motherfucking affairs. And then the internet goes out, which is troubling to me because I got a new modem because the other one sucked. And now I'm in the middle of a conversation with Ed and the internet goes down. Now, if
I suspect Hugo Chavez
and Sidney Powell were fucking with this shit. We start talking about Sidney Powell, and QAnon is listening in, and the deep state is in, and they shut our shit down. They don't want us talking about it. But
that's right.
Now the people listening to the audio version of the podcast won't even know this. I'm going to tell them this, but they won't realize it because I can edit that shit out. Video, I'm not as adept at editing, so I'll see what I can do. Nonetheless, let's get back to what we were talking about. Now I forgot what we were talking about. We were talking about Sidney Powell and all how this is going and how these people genuinely believe what they're saying. And like I say, I think it has to do with a lot with people just want to believe it, so they just immediately do believe it, whether it's credible or not.
Yeah, I think you had a blend on the, let's call it the Republican side, the conservative side, the wacko side, whatever you want to call it. You have a mix of the cynical and the true believers, and sometimes that line is kind of blurry between the two. But you got Rudy, who is a cynic. I mean, he's just doing whatever's good for Rudy. Okay, he's drunk half the time. He's just going for it, right? Then you've got Sydney, who's probably a true believer. Jenny Ellis is probably a true believer.
Right.
What's her name? Thomas, probably a true believer. We know these people. They were hanging in there, thinking that maybe they'd already captured Biden and taken him to Guantanamo and that kind of shit. But and I don't know where all this stuff's coming from that they're spouting. Maybe some of it they're making up. Maybe it's being fed to them, but whatever. But you've got those two sides that Jim Jordan certainly is in the cynical one.
Right.
Anything for Jim. McCarthy, same thing. McCarthy knew what Trump was. He called him out after January 6th, but then he goes down there and Trump goes, well, it'll be good for you if you stick up with me, or whatever he told him. Maybe he's got shit on him. I don't know what.
Isn't it interesting how quickly Republicans change their mind? You said Kevin McCarthy, after the January 6th thing, he came out against Donald Trump. And then within a day or two, oh no, Donald Trump's cool. He changed his whole idea. Same thing with Jim Jordan. He lost 2 straight and he said, listen, we're not going to have another vote. I think it's a good idea. Maybe we should give the power to McHenry and let him do it. Let's get some stuff done and reset and figure this out. Within hours, not days, hours, he says, no, we're going to have another vote, knowing that he's going to get his ass kicked. Somebody, these MAGA fucks, are exerting enough pressure and enough of a threat to get these people to change their mind in an instant. And I'm curious as to what it is and why they still have power. They don't have a majority of the Republican caucus, but the Republicans are just a bunch of pussies. They keep letting this small group of people push them around.
Yeah, and that's basically it. They're told either you go along with us or we're going to primary you. There's somebody worse than you out there we can appeal to and bring them in. And they know it. I mean, most of these congressmen are not exemplary people. In a lot of cases, they're the guy who owns the local bar or something. They're they got one suit and a pair of jeans, and they're going to go to Congress. They can't even afford to live there. Most of them.
Right.
They've got no intellectual background. They don't understand how laws are made. As a matter of fact, let me just throw this out real quick. I wonder how long it's been since any Republican offered a bill that wasn't written by a lobbyist. I bet
I agree.
everything that's been offered has been written by an industry lobbyist of some sort. Some sort of special tax break, something to do something for a particular company, and there's a payoff, right? It's business as usual. And you've got those guys and women that are doing that. And then you've got the crazies, the ones who really do believe that there are demons lurking everywhere. And
there aren't? Well, you know what? That mentality and that practice bleeds over into other businesses. You've got Republicans, maybe even the Democrats in the House, that just put out bills that lobbyists write for them. But if you go to college, the TA teaches the course and the professor sits in his office. Or if you go to the doctor pops in and says, how you doing? And then it's the nurse and the interns that do the work. I mean, that's the problem in this country. The people that are most educated, that are supposed to be the professionals, look to do the least amount of work.
Exactly. And these people get to Congress and they herd them into a room and say, you do exactly what we fucking tell you to do, or you won't be back. I mean, they really do that.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't need you to make laws or anything. We just need you to show up and vote once in a while. The rest of the time, get on the phone and raise money.
Well, and that was the same thing with Donald Trump. I mean, these guys are just figureheads. These guys are just faces. And that's the way it was with Donald Trump. Donald Trump enters the office as the president. He doesn't know what the fuck to do. He doesn't know the first thing to do. So what happens is the Republicans come in, say, you do this and you do this, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And they control the whole situation. So we can blame Donald Trump for being the face, but we have to blame the entire Republican Party for the evil that has been wrought on this country and the damage that's been done to this country.
And once again, they're just front men, all of them.
Yeah.
All of them, you know, the corporations and their think tanks and all of that they've put in place to try to roll back the New Deal, and that's what it's all about, to make the common man a slave again. And if you're a Republican and you happened on this podcast, you need to know this. The Republican Party does not represent you. The Republican Party represents corporations and rich people, and they are out to fucking get you. So wake up.
And I will say this too, to be fair, there are some Democrats that don't represent you too. They don't represent you. Yeah, Joe Manchin's a good example.
Kristen Sinema. Yeah. And there are others. There are others.
Definitely.
The ones, you know, I mean, nobody... I don't think there's a clean person in government. Totally.
Not totally. Know? Well, you know, the thing about it is, that's what I tell people. We're working hard to eradicate these crazy Republicans so we can get back to some normality. But even if we accomplish that, we still got a long way to go to fix the government as a whole, because we got a lot of problems that were there well before Donald Trump ever got there.
I got two words for you, Bob Menendez. Okay.
Yeah. Good example.
I mean, here's a guy. He's loathsome. He is totally loathsome. He's there for money, and but look what happens when a Democrat gets outed.
Yeah, he gets taken to task.
He gets taken to task. When a Republican gets outed, they cover for him.
And if you
try their best.
If you don't think these politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat, don't get treated differently, aren't above the law, aren't kind of these elites. Menendez, there was another story that came out about Menendez because his wife was indicted too. She's in the mix somehow. And then another story came out that she was driving while drinking one time, hit and killed somebody, and they just covered that shit up. That's what happens when you have preferential treatment and you are above the law. Menendez is one of the best examples of corruption and criminality in our government, regardless of whether he's Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, and we have to get to a place, which we never will, but it's my ideal, where we get to a place where people who are in government have some sort of form of integrity, that so that if a Bob Menendez gets outed, they all turn on him. If like with anyway, well, if we could have even half of them with integrity, we could have a decent government. But at this point, the lobbyists write the bills that they get from the corporations, and the party leadership stalls until we got to pass this, and people vote for stuff they haven't read. You know, that's got to stop.
Politicians with integrity, that's almost an oxymoron. It's ridiculous. It's like jumbo shrimp. You know, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. I wanted to talk to you about this New York thing a little bit because there's some things happening. The lawsuit, Letitia James. Yes. I find it interesting how Letitia James comes out every day and gives a little speech about the shit that went on. She is very articulate, very, very smart, and she doesn't sway a bit. She's very, very confident about what she's saying. Now, we know that Donald Trump was in the courtroom for a while the first week. Then he wasn't there. And now he came back this last week. And he's having trouble sitting still. He's like that. He's like the kids in grade school. Well, he's got the wiggles because he's flailing his hands and mumbling under his breath. And he thinks that's going to work for him. He thinks the judge is going to allow that. And he's finding out differently. Then he goes out in the hall afterwards and talks some shit. And he said some shit recently that really puts him on the edge or over the edge of these gag orders. So like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what in fact they do.
Yeah.
They got to do something.
You've heard the term blood in the water, right? There's a shark attack and there's blood in the water, and then everybody else shows up after the shark's done, right? Well, that's kind of what's happening now.
Right.
I'm seeing all of these other sea creatures circling Donald Trump, and we're hearing stuff now from, like, the guy who was trying to write his autobiography, that Trump couldn't sit still for more than 30 minutes, sometimes 15. That he couldn't concentrate, that he was playing with the pens and stuff. And all through his presidency, no, he can't read a paper, make it a page. Okay, he can't do a page, make it bullet points. So he can't do bullet points, make it a card, boil it down to one sentence, that kind of thing. So we're learning this. We probably knew it on some level, but I'm sensing that the end is near. He's either going to run, he's going to cash in, or he'll be the court cases will do what they're supposed to do. Number one, the New York case will break him.
Yep.
Georgia will put him in jail, and then the federal case will put him in jail for longer, and
he'll be finished.
He'll be finished, unless he runs, and then he'll run, but without any money, where's he going to run to?
Right. Well, people still come to me and say, "Oh, he'll get away. He'll walk away scot-free." You're an intelligent man. You've gone through this with me. Tell me, is there any scenario in your mind that Donald Trump gets clear of everything, that he walks away and walks away scot-free? That's just not possible. The odds are with him.
Let me put it this way. If he ever did, I would move to a different country because it's all over. It's all over. If Donald Trump walks, it's all over.
For the damage he's done to this country, the damage he's done to the Republican Party, the shit he's pulled on Israel, especially, I'm surprised this motherfucker's not a marked man. I mean, there have been presidents that at least assassination attempts happened for far less than what Donald Trump has done to far fewer people.
This is true, but I can walk out on my front steps here and look 100 yards away at a Trump sign in a guy's front lawn. It's the mugshot saying "Wanted Trump for President 2024."
Well, you're going to be sadly disappointed because that's just not going to happen. Now, Michael Cohen was supposed to be in the courtroom this week, the week we're talking about. This is Friday. But apparently he was sick, so he's coming next week. And I think Donald Trump will be there when Michael Cohen is there. And it's going to be one of those things, be careful what you ask for, because Donald Trump is sitting there looking at the witnesses mean and tough, like he's trying to intimidate him. He can't say some of the shit he wants to say, so he gives him the mean mug. But Michael Cohen isn't somebody who's going to be intimidated by that. And where Donald Trump has the big problem is when evidence is presented and it's unquestionable, he starts getting itchy. He starts getting angry. He does what a narcissist does. They lose their temper in hopes that they can cow the people that are saying what they're saying. And that's not going to happen to Michael Cohen, and certainly not in a fucking courtroom. So he's going to be very uncomfortable next week.
Yeah. One thing I want to throw in before we're done. Speaking of narcissists and evil people, there was a ruling for Alex Jones. You remember him?
Yeah.
InfoWars guy, he gets a judgment against him, immediately declares bankruptcy. the judge has now said, well, you can take a personal bankruptcy, but you got to still come up with $1.1 billion to pay the Sandy Hook folks. Sorry.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And that's the thing is, you know, what I don't understand about him is that he's still flapping his lips. These fuckers apparently don't learn a lesson. Donald Trump doesn't learn a lesson. Republican Jim Jordan doesn't fucking learn a lesson. I mean, even when you know you're going to lose, you still got to triple down. I mean, this is going to be the destruction of anybody who takes that tactic. They can't do anything but fail, crash, burn, and just destroy themselves. I'm looking forward to it, but I don't understand the mentality.
I don't either. All I can figure is people just don't pay attention. They just do not pay attention, or they would have seen Jim Jordan showing people how incredibly fucking inept and stupid he is running the committees he's in charge of.
Right.
The ones that keep promising evidence that doesn't exist, who keep promising impeachments and locking up people when they have nothing. Right. And they bring in witnesses who go, I don't know what you're talking about. Nah, that's not true. That didn't happen. You know, and speaking of which, Donald Trump's lawyers did that very thing. You know, they brought in the New York case, they brought in the appraiser who supposedly appraised all these properties, and they put him on the stand. He said, "No, I didn't do it. I never heard of that. I didn't sign that."
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is they keep arguing points that really don't have any bearing of trying to prove him innocent. It's all about ego. It's like, you know, when you look at all the things that have been brought against him, the one thing he argues most about, I really do have a lot of money. Well, even if that were true, that's not keeping you out of fucking jail. Why is that the most important thing you have to worry about?
Well, yeah, I mean, his argument seems to be, yeah, I devalued the properties because they're worth a lot more than that. You know, I mean, I don't, it boggles my mind that anyone can't see the problem with that.
I got to tell you, if my child came to me with the arguments that Donald Trump has for any misdeed that he did, say my kids broke a window and he came with the excuses that Donald Trump, I think I'd need to put that kid in a special class because fuck, you should be smart. If you're going to argue with me with something legitimate. Don't just try to pull something out of your ass and think I'm going to buy it. Just because you're stupid doesn't mean I'm stupid. And that's, I think, where the problem is with these Trump-fucks. They think everybody is as stupid as they are. They can't comprehend anybody smarter than them. They think they're the smartest people in the room. But that's where they fail because it's so obvious and it looks so pathetic. They don't even get it. They don't understand it.
Apparently that's the case. My point is we've had plenty of exposure of Jim Jordan to show that he is incapable of being a Speaker of the House or even running a committee. Yeah. That he is not qualified in any way. And I guess there's enough Republicans that are pissed at him for being a moron and making them look like morons that they won't vote for him. Right. And where it goes from here, I have no idea. And I don't think anybody does.
No, I don't think anybody does. Well, there's a lot of things happening. I think things are coming to fruition. I think the end is near, and I'm grateful for that. With that, we're going to wrap things up with the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed, thanks for coming in. It's always good to get your insights. And you come on back next week. Our scheduling will be more normal, and hopefully the internet won't go down, but that doesn't stop us. We keep fucking talking. You should have heard what we talked about when we were off. That was the best shit ever. Anyway, Ed, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it immensely.
Always for those a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you listening at home, thanks for taking the time to listen to the show, and I hope you have a great day. We'll of course be back tomorrow.